You wake up one day, and every bank vault on Earth has quietly changed its locks overnight. Every hospital simulating a new drug candidate finishes a calculation in an afternoon that used to take a supercomputer cluster the better part of a year. And the reason has nothing to do with a faster laptop, a smarter chatbot, or a new phone in your pocket. It has to do with a machine sitting inside a research facility in Yorktown Heights, New York, that just quietly rewrote what a computer is even capable of. For years, one company has been measuring its own progress with a single brutal number, a number designed specifically so nobody could fake improvement, exaggerate a headline, or dress up incremental tinkering as a revolution. That number is called quantum volume, and IBM just pushed it further than almost anyone outside the field realized was possible this soon. To understand why this matters, you have to understand just how strange the rules of this particular race are. IBM invented quantum volume back in 2017 as a way to stop the industry from playing games with qubit counts alone, because a chip with 1,000 unstable qubits is worthless next to a chip with 100 qubits that actually behave. Quantum volume forces a system to prove itself on scale, connectivity, gate fidelity, and speed all at once, compressed into a single figure that either goes up or it doesn't. Since that measurement was introduced, IBM has made a public habit of doubling it almost every single year, climbing from a quantum volume of 4 on a 5-qubit machine called Tenerife to 64, then 128, then all the way past 256 on its Falcon processor within just a handful of years. That kind of sustained doubling year after year is not normal in hardware engineering. It is the kind of curve that, if you saw it in classical computing history, you'd call it Moore's Law with a grudge. Now zoom out and look at what's actually riding on this progress, because the dollar figures involved are almost cartoonishly large. Governments and corporations have poured tens of billions of dollars into quantum research over the past few years alone, with McKinsey and S&P Global both tracking global quantum investment, surging past the tens of billions annually as of the mid-2020s. IBM itself has publicly committed to reaching quantum advantage, the point where a quantum machine solves a real-world problem faster or cheaper than any classical supercomputer on Earth, by the end of this year, with full-scale fault-tolerant quantum computing targeted for 2029. That is not a vague research promise buried in a footnote. That is Jay Gambetta, the man who directs IBM Research, standing in front of the industry and staking the company's credibility on a calendar. And if a claim like that from one of the most conservative, most litigated names in enterprise technology doesn't make you sit up a little straighter, go ahead and hit that subscribe button now, because the next few minutes are going to explain exactly why IBM feels confident enough to say it out loud. Here's the part that should actually keep you up at night if you work anywhere near finance, defense, healthcare, or logistics. Just this past March, IBM and a coalition of Department of Energy-funded Quantum Science Center labs demonstrated that a quantum processor could accurately simulate the real magnetic behavior of a crystal called KCUF3, matching results that had previously only come from physical neutron scattering experiments in a lab. That's not a party trick. That is a quantum computer functioning as a genuine scientific instrument, producing results that material scientists can actually trust, pointing toward faster paths to next-generation superconductors, better batteries, and accelerated drug discovery. And it happened on hardware built around IBM's newest architecture, a chip called Nighthawk, carrying 120 qubits linked through 218 tunable couplers, each one engineered specifically to push error rates down while pushing usable circuit depth up. Every one of those numbers feeds directly into quantum volume. Every one of those numbers is why the figure keeps climbing instead of stalling out the way skeptics have predicted for over a decade. If this kind of quiet, unglamorous engineering grind is the part of the story that actually excites you, that's exactly the instinct that separates people who understand where technology is heading from people who only notice it after it's already changed their lives. So smash that like button before we go further. But raw numbers on a slide mean nothing if you don't understand what actually happens inside these machines to make a figure like quantum volume move at all. And that requires stepping back from the finance and the headlines for a moment into the actual physics of why this has been so agonizingly hard to build in the first place. Every quantum computer, no matter who builds it, runs on qubits instead of the ordinary bits inside your phone or laptop. A regular bit is a light switch. It's on or it's off, 1 or 0, nothing in between, and that simplicity is exactly why classical computers are so reliable. A qubit is nothing like that. A qubit can exist in a blended state called superposition, holding something closer to both on and off simultaneously, and when you link multiple qubits together through a property called entanglement, the system can explore a staggering number of possible answers to a problem all at once, instead of checking them one at a time, the way your laptop would. That's the raw power. But it comes bundled with a curse, because qubits are almost unbelievably fragile. A stray vibration, a whisper of heat, a nearby electromagnetic field, any of it can knock a qubit out of its delicate state and corrupt the calculation. Engineers call this decoherence, And it is the single reason quantum computing has taken 30 years longer to become useful than early enthusiasts in the 1990s assumed it would. Think of building a quantum processor like trying to conduct an orchestra, where every musician is standing on a floor made of ice, in a room where someone might slam a door at any second. And if even one musician slips, the entire performance falls apart before the audience hears a single coherent note. That's what engineers at IBM are wrestling with every single time they add another qubit to a chip. More qubits should mean more power, but more qubits also means more places for the ice to crack. Quantum volume exists precisely because it refuses to let you cheat that problem. You can't just cram more qubits onto a chip and call it progress. You have to prove those qubits stay coordinated, connected, and accurate long enough to actually finish a meaningful calculation, and that combination is what makes climbing this particular number so brutally difficult, and so meaningful when it actually happens. Here's the second way to picture it, and this one might land even harder if you've ever renovated a house. Adding qubits without improving their quality is like adding extra rooms onto a house that already has a shaky foundation. Sure, the house looks bigger from the outside, more square footage, more impressive on paper, but every additional room adds more weight, more stress, and more chances for the whole structure to crack under pressure. What IBM has been doing instead, generation after generation, chip after chip, is reinforcing the foundation first, tightening gate fidelity, improving qubit connectivity, cutting error rates on components like the Heron and now Nighthawk processors before adding more floors to the house. That's the quiet, unglamorous engineering discipline that most headlines skip over entirely. And it's exactly why quantum volume keeps climbing instead of plateauing the way so many skeptics confidently predicted it would by now. If explanations like this are the reason you actually stick around instead of scrolling past another vague quantum headline, this is your cue to hit subscribe, because we're just getting into what this actually unlocks. So what does a higher quantum volume actually let you do that you couldn't do before? The honest answer is that it expands the size and complexity of the problems a quantum computer can tackle without the calculation collapsing into noise before it finishes. Pharmaceutical companies spend an average of 10 to 15 years and billions of dollars bringing a single new drug to market, largely because simulating how a molecule actually behaves at the quantum mechanical level is something classical supercomputers are fundamentally bad at, even the biggest ones on Earth. A higher fidelity, higher volume quantum processor edges closer to modeling those molecular interactions with real accuracy instead of rough approximation, which is exactly the kind of capability IBM demonstrated with its recent materials simulation work alongside Department of Energy-funded research labs. Financial institutions are watching just as closely, because portfolio optimization and fraud detection both involve searching through combinations of variables so vast that classical systems have to guess at approximate answers instead of finding the truly optimal one. And that is precisely the category of problem where a system with genuine quantum volume, not just qubit count, starts to matter. There's also a darker implication, sitting quietly underneath all of this progress, one that doesn't get nearly enough airtime outside of cybersecurity circles. Every step forward in quantum volume is also, whether IBM frames it this way publicly or not, a step closer to a machine powerful enough to threaten the encryption protecting your bank, your medical records, and your government's most sensitive communications. Security researchers have a name for the moment that becomes possible, and if that phrase alone doesn't unsettle you a little, you haven't fully clocked what's actually at stake here, which is exactly why the next part of this story matters just as much as the milestone itself. Security researchers call that moment Q-Day, the point at which a quantum machine becomes powerful enough to crack the encryption standards, RSA chief among them, that currently protect nearly every sensitive transaction on the internet. It's part of why the United States government has been funding a separate urgent push toward post-quantum cryptography, new encryption standards specifically designed to resist an attack from a machine like the one IBM is quietly building toward. Every rise in quantum volume brings that reckoning closer, not because IBM is racing to break anything, but because the same underlying hardware improvements that let you simulate a magnetic crystal or optimize a supply chain are the exact improvements that eventually let you run an algorithm like Shor's, the one mathematicians have long known could unravel modern encryption if the hardware ever caught up. That is not fear-mongering. That is the plain, uncomfortable physics of the situation. And it's a big part of why banks and governments are being told that quantum-safe protocols need to be standard practice well before the end of this decade. Now, to be fair, and a complete picture requires being fair here, IBM's own roadmap is more cautious than the breathless coverage around it. Reaching quantum advantage, the point where a quantum machine outperforms every classical supercomputer on a genuinely useful task, is targeted for this year. But full-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computing, the version powerful enough to run the encryption-breaking algorithms everyone worries about, isn't expected until 2029 at the earliest, according to IBM's own public statements. Rival companies like Quantinuum have actually claimed the outright quantum volume record in recent years, pushing the metric into the millions using trapped ion architecture rather than IBM's superconducting approach. a reminder that this race has more than one serious contender and more than one credible path forward. Skeptics inside the industry, including voices as prominent as NVIDIA's Jensen Huang, have publicly argued that truly useful quantum computing may still be 15 to 30 years away from broad commercial impact, and that skepticism deserves to be part of this story rather than edited out for the sake of a cleaner narrative. Progress is real. It is not the same thing as arrival. But here's why this specific moment still deserves your full attention instead of a passing scroll. Compare it to the way classical computing evolved out of room-sized machines built from vacuum tubes in the 1940s. Machines that required teams of engineers just to keep running, and that only governments and universities could afford to operate. Nobody working inside those early labs could have predicted that within a few decades, that same raw capability would shrink down into a device sitting comfortably in your pocket. What made that leap possible wasn't one single dramatic breakthrough. It was exactly this kind of unglamorous, compounding, year-over-year discipline. The same discipline IBM has been quietly running since 2017, doubling a brutal, unforgiving metric again and again, until the gap between laboratory curiosity and real-world tool finally closed. Quantum volume climbing higher isn't a headline moment the way a flashy new chip announcement is. It's something more important than that. It's proof the foundation is holding while the building keeps rising, floor after floor, year after year. Exactly the kind of quiet compounding progress that historians look back on later and call the actual turning point, long after everyone stopped paying attention to the individual steps that got there. If you've made it this far, you understand something most people scrolling past quantum headlines completely miss. The biggest shifts in technology rarely arrive with fireworks. They arrive as a number buried in a press release climbing a little higher than it did the year before, until one day the gap between what a quantum computer can do and what a classical supercomputer can do simply isn't a gap anymore. IBM just pushed that number further than almost anyone outside a handful of physics labs realized was possible this soon, and the machine behind that number is edging closer, year by year, to reshaping medicine, finance, security, and computing itself. Hit subscribe now, because the next 12 months of this story are going to move faster than almost anything else happening in technology right now. And you don't want to be the person who only finds out about it after everyone else already has.